What's up, everybody? Gary Simon here of DesignCourse. So yes, you don't see in my office. It's still a disaster because we're getting ready to sell the house, but nonetheless, who cares about that? Adobe XD has also just released this really cool plugin, and it's its extension for Visual Studio Code. And really, it's a big deal because it really helps the communication process between a UI designer and a front-end developer. All right, so I'm going to show you exactly how to use this. It's called the Adobe XD Visual Studio Code plugin, but it allows you to define what are called DSPs, or Design System Packages. And so I'm going to take you through a real-world scenario where you play the role as a UI designer working in Adobe XD, creating all of your design tokens or your assets in the Assets panel. And then we're going to switch over to the front-end developer role, and we're going to take that Adobe XD libraries document, we're going to import it, and with the help of this plugin here, the Adobe XD plugin, we're going to create a design system package, and you'll be amazed just at how awesome and organized it will be, and how much easier it will be for you as a front-end developer to go ahead and create components and all of the necessary CSS and styling and HTML snippets even, with the help of this plugin. All right, so as always, if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe, and let's get started. Before we begin, getting a job in design is more competitive than ever, which is why you need to focus on skills that help you stand out. In a recent study by Design Week, 70% of respondents said that their company is investing more in interactive prototyping. So Framer is here to help you level up. Getting started is easy. Import from your favorite design tool and start swapping static elements for interactive components. Set up transitions with just a few clicks and create impressive animations right on the canvas, all 100% code-free. The result is presentation dynamite. Prototypes that show clients, teammates, and even your boss that you're a cut above the rest. So sign up for free or get 20% off any paid plan by visiting framer.com/DesignCourse. It is the first link in the description here on YouTube. All right, so we have a brand new Adobe XD document. Go ahead and choose whatever you want to start with. I'm just going to do a Web 1920 document. And at this point, what we want to do, and plus really quickly, if you're not really all that familiar with XD, this left sidebar can be toggled over here with the layers, and you can also have the plugins, but we're really going to be focused on this area, which is the assets, which is the core of this tutorial in making the whole DSP, the design system package stuff, work by adding assets, otherwise known, sometimes referred to as tokens, over here. All right, so let's just design a real quick, very simple landing page. Only take a few minutes, just because I really want to provide the actual full context here. So you're the UI designer. You may be playing multiple roles as being a single person who's going to also be the front-end developer. But right now we're playing the role of a UI designer, and we're going to go ahead and put a title here. So a superior existence. I don't even know why I thought about that. Just one of those cheesy headlines or so. And I'm going to choose a color that's like right around there. I like that for my primary color. We're also going to use a font. This is one of the Google fonts. What's it called? Unknown, something like that. And we're going to bump that up because it is a headline. And there's our headline, very simple. And there's a few things about this headline that makes it unique. First is the color. Second is the size, the font size. And third is the type. Also the weight, is it regular, is it bold, et cetera, et cetera. So what we want to do over here when we create this, we want to add it to our colors here. So if we click this little plus icon, it's going to add it to our colors. Now I like switching to the grid view. You'll be able to double click on this and rename it to whatever you want. So I'm going to name it to primary-color. All right, just name it whatever you want, but give it a naming convention that makes sense to you, and also easier for others like your front-end developers to work with. Now we're going to have a sub-headline down here. Blah, blah, blah. Let's go ahead and make this around there for now, and also significantly scale that down. And we'll go ahead also, and let's go ahead and give ourselves a few lines here. And then we'll go to our plugins. I have the Lorem Ipsum plugin. You guys can install that if you wish. And then we'll bump this up right around there. All right, that's going to be the type treatment we apply for not really what I would call the subheadline, but really just a paragraph of text. And so for that has some unique characteristics about it as well. So for instance, we can go ahead and add the color for it. All right, so we'll just call this color, let's just call this paragraph body or something like that. And then also, whenever you select a type-based element like these two, you can go ahead and add character styles as well. So there's a character style right there. And let's just call this one headline. There's a character style here. And then we could just call this one paragraph. All right. So additionally, let's also get a couple components here because we can work with components within our DSP as well. So let's have like a little form, like a little text field and then a submit button. All right, so first for our text field, we'll just drag out something like that. We'll make them pill-shaped containers. Maybe we'll bump them up to about 4 in terms of border width. We'll go ahead. By the way, real quickly, let's select the artboard and give this a background. Let's give it like a light gray. F6, F6, F6. We'll add that as well. Now, okay, so right here we have a border color. Let's reduce that opacity quite a bit. Make it a little bit bigger. All right, and then let's put in some type here. So the type here is just going to say like email address. All right, we'll move it into place. And we'll choose light for this one. Maybe make it a little bit darker. Yeah, something like there. I'm not being too picky about the design here. And then finally, one of the last elements we'll have is just the submit button, our call to action. So we'll go ahead and choose this primary color for the background. We'll duplicate this and we'll put continue. All right, so we'll make that white. And so I just added several things that we're going to need to add over here. So let me just put that to bold, and there we go. So now center that up. And we're going to add just one more thing. Let's say, for instance, we want another component for like a gallery. All right, so for the gallery, we'll go ahead and make that a little bit darker. We'll go ahead and repeat the grid. So let's scale that in. That way we can go ahead and bring these in right around there. And that's it. Okay, now the whole design here is finished. I don't want to go into some robust design because that would be just, we have enough here to work with so you can understand the process. So we added a background color. That's something we're definitely going to want to add. Now, one thing that's interesting is if you select a group or the whole artboard and you click plus on like colors, it's going to add every single color here automatically for you if you want to take that route. That might be a little bit confusing though when it comes to naming them because it adds them all at once. I'll just show you real quick because we only have 2 here. So you can see it's added all these, although it won't add what's already there and have been added. But at the same time, it might be a little bit confusing to name which one of these that you might want to choose. So for instance, if you select one, depending on what you're selecting, it's going to change that to the color. But if we right click, you can do highlight on canvas. So that's kind of cool. It lets you know exactly where it's at. So, this, for instance, could be called the text field placeholder, text field hyphen placeholder. Next up, we can highlight this on the canvas. This could be called the text field border. Or you can name this something like form placeholder or form border. That might be a little bit relevant because you have other elements outside of text fields. No big deal though. We can also highlight that. We're just going to call this one for the color background darker. All right, and then for the white, let's just rename this to white. And then For this light color, what is this? This is the background, I believe. If I highlight this, yeah, it's the background color. So we'll just call this background color. And that's all we're going to have for our colors. You could have many, many more, of course. You probably would if this is a bigger project. So now character styles underneath here. Just one more character style, really, or a couple rather. We have this one. So if we want to add the character style, we'll click plus here after selecting it. We can call this placeholder. All right. There's another one here for like the button call to action. So we can call this CTA type or something like that. I would really need to rethink these naming conventions to make them all consistent, but you get the hint here. So now we have just what's left final is the components. All right. So we have components here. This is a component, so we can go ahead and right click and just choose make component. This is going to be called a gallery. We have our primary call to action. Let's group that up, right click, make a component, and that will be primary-CTA. And then also finally we have this as a component. We'll make that a component, and we'll just call this text field. All right, so now we're ready. All right, so we've added all of our assets, or your design tokens, if you will. And now it's a matter of, go ahead and save your document wherever you wish. I'll just call this CTA, my DSP. How about that? We'll go ahead and save that. We're going to click on this icon right up here, this little publish as a library. This is a necessary step. So we have my DSP. We're going to click publish here. And then what we can do after this part, so if we click browse right here, it'll show us, let's click done, my DSP. So right here, we click get link, and then now we can copy this link. That's what we need in order to communicate it with Visual Studio Code. So now you're pretty much done here as the UI designer. And now we come back to Visual Studio Code, and you want to open up a empty document. So this is an empty folder I have right here called my DSP. So what you need first though is you want to come over here to the extensions and search for Adobe XD and install it. I'm already installed. It's very quick and easy. And after you have that installed, you'll notice down here we have this little icon where it says XD. So you click on that, and we want to create a package. So design system package name. Name this whatever you want, whatever big companies name their design systems, all sorts of interesting, unique names. I'm going to be very lame. You know what? Let's just name this DesignCourse. There we go. Select folder. So I choose a location to save your DSP to. All right, so if you don't select a location, the current project root folder would be used as a default location. Here's the thing, you have to choose a folder because otherwise you can't click next. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go to my code folder, and I'm gonna choose my DSP. And we're just gonna save it here in this project. All right, and then we're gonna click next. Now, target languages, all right? So whenever you make a change to your DSP here within the Adobe XD Visual Studio Code plugin or extension, it's going to take a lot of the information based on like your design tokens and all of that, and it's going to save them to these different platforms. So for instance, your colors, if you choose CSS, it's going to export those as CSS variables in a CSS file. And it's going to do similar stuff to all these other options right here. They even have Sass. So we're just going to keep this simple and stick with CSS. And next up, we have to, this is the part where we paste in that link. All right, so as you can see, Creative Cloud Libraries, this is based on that link that we created. So basically, private CC library links require an Adobe ID. Ours wasn't private, so we can hit skip. Oh, sorry. We can hit import right here. And now it's going to import all of this stuff here. You can see under components, we have 3. It was the gallery, the primary call to action in the text field. It also has tokens. So the tokens are all based on the colors that we've added. And then we also have typography, like the CTA type, headline, paragraph. So just to show you how these align up, if I move this over, we go to tokens, we'll see for colors, we have background darker, we have text field placeholder right there, and it just has an associated color value with it. All right. Typography, like I said, same thing. It's going to save the headline or the font family, weight, and size. And also for our components, it provides you with a preview, a graphic preview of what it looks like. It doesn't automatically export the code to CSS and HTML for you already. It just provides you with a preview of what it's supposed to look like, essentially. Same thing with our primary call to action and also the text field right here. There's nothing you can do to edit. It's just a preview. All right. What's cool is we can edit all of this stuff. So if we click on Start Editing right here, then we can add associated tokens with it. Now, of course, you can edit all this other stuff. Before I get ahead of myself, notice under documentation, we have an introduction. Now, this introduction is something that is structured through Markdown. If you don't know what Markdown is, it's just an easy way to create style to an otherwise basic plain text document. And so it's popular for, it's the same Markdown that's used, for instance, for your GitHub README pages. So if you click on the edit icon for the title here or here, we can see that all this stuff is things that you can edit. The purpose of this page is the intention is for you to edit it for your particular design system. And so I'm not going to edit or anything like that, but just to know that this would be your introduction for your design system where you put any relevant and pertinent information for people like other developers or designers who are going to be using it. Principles, again here, this would include information about how your design system should be structured. You can add all these pages and make it into a robust design system with a lot of documentation where you outline sizing, topography, when things, how components are to be used or not to be used. This all goes here in the documentation section. Design tokens, like I mentioned before, design tokens are just the the visual characteristics of your design system. So that includes colors, fonts, font weights, scale. It could include margins and padding and all that stuff. And then, of course, your components are your components down here. So once you get this and you click edit, again, you can edit all the documentation. You can edit the tokens here. So when you edit a token, as you can see, tokens fall under 3 different types of color, size, and custom, as you can see. If we toggle these on and off, it will hide them. And so when we click edit on one of these, we have a few different options. We can specify the type of token, color or size, or an alias. The token ID right here this is basically pulled from whatever you name it on this section in Adobe XD. And then it has a hex and opacity that you can add, a description, like, when you should be using this, and also any type of associated tags. When you're done, always click this checkbox or just the X if you didn't make changes to that. Typography, pretty much the same thing, except you just have different fields that are pertinent or relevant to typography, like the font family, weight, size, description, tag, etc. Now your components, you have several different options or areas where you add these components. Like I said, they're the reusable elements of your design system, essentially. So that includes things like galleries, your nav bar. There's a million things. So what we can do here is, when it comes to the token section, we have to ask ourselves, what tokens comprise of this particular component? All right, so well, for this component, the only token that we're using, so let's click the edit icon, is, and if we start typing here, we'll see a list, is the background darker. right here. So let's click add, and then we'll go ahead and click that little checkbox. So now we have a token associated with this particular component. Now, the purpose of this is just to let your front-end developer or whatever, or whoever is working with this, or who's responsible for implementing into HTML, CSS, or JavaScript, etc., to know like which design tokens, or in other words, which visual aesthetics are used to create this particular component. So again, if I click on background darker and highlight on canvas, it's right here. All right. So there's no other characteristics there for any other relevant components to add, or I mean tokens to add rather. So documentation, you can add documentation here about how and when you should be using this, perhaps. I'm not going to do that. That's pretty self-explanatory. But code snippet, this is a big one. So what we can do is if we click the edit icon, we have a snippet trigger. So this snippet trigger is a keyword. We're just going to call it gallery. That when we're in actual HTML, we start typing the word gallery, it will actually show up in a little drop down right near where you're typing, and then you can quickly click on the enter key or whatever, and then it will go ahead and automatically paste whatever is in this little snippet code over here. So first you select the language. So we're going to do HTML. As you can see, there's a lot of other languages that you could choose from. So for our gallery, the HTML might look something like, for instance, let's see here, div class equals gallery. Now, unfortunately, the editor isn't very similar to when you're actually in Visual Studio Code, because it doesn't have Emmet or anything like that. Now, normally these would probably be images, but I'm just going to save time. We'll just copy this, and there we go. So now we can go ahead and save that, and we might also have CSS associated with it as well. So if that's the case, we can go ahead and choose. We'll edit it first. Sorry about that. Now notice it says used. Right now we currently are using just the HTML. We can also add CSS to it. So in here, CSS code can be pasted. And so that code, for instance, could look something like, I'm not going to do it right now, but I'm just going to put in gallery and then display grid. That's obviously not enough to create what we did, but I just wanted to show you real quick. Now, let's say, for instance, you're done editing this stuff, and we're going to click Finish Editing. So now it says tokens compiled. Let's open that folder real quickly. Actually, we don't have to do it in here. We can do it right in here. This is the folder for the design system package, and it's based on the name that we gave it. So if we go over into the dist directory in the CSS, we can click on variables, and we can see where it says root, and this is applying all of our different CSS variables based on the design tokens that were created. Very, very cool stuff. So before we get a little bit further, let's create an actual index.html on the project root. And let's link up our design system CSS variable CSS file. So let me make this a little bit bigger. So for our link href, we're going to put in DesignCourse, and there's a style dictionary folder, and inside of here is a CSS variables.css file. Next, let's Shift Alt and down arrow key to replicate that. We'll have our own CSS file in a CSS folder, and the file is called main.css. So now let's go ahead and create a folder called CSS, and let's use Sass for this for the heck of it. For Sass, you're going to want the Sass compiler plugin, and then we'll click Watch Sass down there. So I imported the variable CSS file from the DSP first, so that then in my main CSS file, I have access to these, to all these CSS variables, essentially. So just to demonstrate how this works, we'll take the body color, because we do have a very like a gray body color, and we'll say background. For initially, we won't use that just to make sure it works, because it's a very light gray. You might mistake it for white. Let's just make it the primary color. So var primary color and save. And then we can go ahead and right click, open with live server. If you don't see this option, go ahead and get the live server plugin. So right click, open with live server. And it's not working. Why is that not working? All right, well, let's see why. Is there one called primary color? Oh yes, it's because I forgot to include the dist folder here. Dumb me. All right, so now we have that background color because that is our primary color. And now you are blind. So let's go ahead back to our main Sass, and we're gonna change this simply to from primary to background. And now we're gonna see that it works. So it's this very light gray. All right, so that's how you're able to use that. So if we go back to our index.html, let's write out some initial CSS. So to recreate that element using it, using that design system package in the way that you're intended to use. So first we're gonna have our container. I'm gonna put this here just to, as an overall container to hold everything. We have our H1 element, a superior experience. We also have our paragraph, and we'll call this Lorem 25. All right. And then also inside of here, we have a form at the end. So form action, that's not going anywhere. So inside of our form, we'll just have an input. Now here's the cool thing. We can have code snippets for any of our components, which I demonstrated already. So for instance, underneath the form is the gallery, and we already did that code, that HTML code snippet. So if I type in gallery, we'll see it says XD gallery. Well, now why does it say XD? So let's back up real quick. We'll come here and we'll go to DSP settings. Now, if we scroll down to prefix, this is where that's coming from. So the prefix is going to be something that lets you know this is coming from the DSP. So I'm just going to call it DesignCourse like that. Now we're going to save it. DSP settings are saved now. So if we go back to our index.html and I type in gallery, now we see we have two options. One is HTML. If we hit the down key, we have CSS as well, because we have two code snippets, one for HTML and one for CSS that we created. So if I hit this, ta-da, it's all there. Look how awesome that is. So you can create your own code snippets like that. So in our Sass file, we could type in gallery as well to CSS, and there we go. It's like magic. So let's continue on by styling this thing up to match our document. So right now it doesn't match it at all. It looks horrendously ugly, right? So switching back to our main Sass file, let's go ahead real quickly to our container. We'll do a width of, let's just say 60%. I'm going to do margin 0 auto, the old school way of just kind of floating things in the middle. Our H1, we're going to say color. Now here's one of the times where it could make sense to go ahead and use, let's click this icon here, and then we'll drag this thing over there. There we go. It would make sense to use your design system package. So for your H1, whoever's responsible for doing the CSS, like the front end dev, they're not sure what color it should be, right? So we can come over in Typography, for instance, or tokens, and we can see over here that we have a primary color. Now, for your components, you could possibly add a headline, and then all those tokens would be associated with it. And then that way they would know for sure for a headline, primary color is a token that would be associated with it and used. you could also outline this stuff in your documentation as well. So there's a lot of areas that, you know, could provide context and information and guidance essentially to a front-end developer about what things should be named. So we'll do var primary color here, and then we'll do a font size, 4 em units, and just a margin bottom. We're going to reset that just to 0. All right, so when we save that, there we go. Now we also know that the font family that we're using here is that Yvonne font family. You'd want to Google import this. The only reason it's going to work on my machine locally is because I already have that font installed. I'm not going to bother importing it though. Font family. I'm not even going to bother trying to type this out because it's a crazy font name. There we go. There it is. And then next up, we can have our paragraph. So our paragraph will be a font size 1.3 em units and a line height of 1.4 em units. All right. And then let's go ahead and take our text field. So our text field, let's go back to our DSP here. All right, here's our text field component. Let's go ahead and start editing this and start adding tokens that are associated with it. So if we click here and add a token, we know that the background is white, so we can add that. We also have placeholder. So if we just type in place, we'll see all this coming up. Text field, placeholder. Now we want to make sure we're using the right tokens here. So placeholder, there's a character style called placeholder, simply placeholder. So I'll click add there. We also have the color of the type, which that is placeholder. Sorry about that. And I think that would be pretty good. Text field border as well. So text field, and where are you? Right there. All right, so if we click that, we'll see that we have all this information that lets us know how to properly construct this. So we have a white background, we have the font family, the font weight, the size, and then also the token for the text field border. So that's pretty much everything that we would need. So now add any documentation if you wish. We could also add our code snippets. All right, so for the text field, let's go ahead and add the snippet trigger. We'll call this gallery. Language, HTML. All right, so for our text field, let me reference the reference monitor real quickly. We'll go ahead and we're gonna, it's very simple. We're just gonna do an input, type equals email, placeholder equals email address, and typically for accessibility, you would want at least a floating label or something like that. Class is text field. All right, so we'll save that. Now let's go ahead and do a CSS just for the fun of it. And we're going to say that this is the CSS. Now, one of the things about this, when you're first writing the CSS to make this possible, it's hard to do it in this little CSS snippet area. What I would first do is just do it in your regular CSS file, like over here, get it looking good, and then you can place that in there. You don't even have to create a CSS snippet if you don't want to. This is all optional anyhow. So let's just go ahead and save that and finish editing. All right, so now we can go back, and if we want to add our text field, oops, what is happening? I don't think I properly gave that the right, oh yeah, I messed something up. Let's move this over real quickly. Start editing. So we have our gallery here. There we go. Snippet trigger. This is not the gallery. This is actually the text field. All right, so now we'll save that. Now we'll go back text field. There we go. Save it. And then we can go down here, text field. Save that as well. And then we'll come back here and there it is. How awesome is that? All right. So now what we can do is you can do the same thing for your call to action as well. And really, I'll run through that real quickly, just for one last time, one last component, just so you can kind of get the hang of this. So for the primary call to action, what we're going to do is we'll have, let's see, our tokens. So primary color is 1 token. We also have white. And then, sorry, my dog is barking down there, of course. And also, we have, for our typography, we have CTA type. All right, so we'll save that, or commit those changes rather, and we have all this information that comprises of this particular component. So now for code snippet, we can go ahead and change to our HTML. The trigger is just going to be, we'll call this primary-CTA. And then under language, we'll go to HTML. And then we'll go ahead and I'm just going to copy this here. It's just an A element with primary CTA as a class with a continue text. Go back here, CSS if we wish. I think we get it at this point though. Very simple. We'll save that and then finish editing. And then there we go. So now we can go back and then we can say primary CTA, continue, and go here and primary CTA, CSS, save that bad boy. And there we go. Now that's not correct, is it? So in that case, you can always edit this stuff because this looks really bad. You can make your changes here until they work and look good in the browser as you're saving with live reload with the live server. And then let's say, for instance, after you do that, we save that and then we go to our browser and now we're happy with the way this looks. Then you can just go ahead and take all this back into your CSS. We'll start editing, choose CSS, and there we go. All right, so I finish editing, and there we go. So then if you ever want to use that again or reference this to create this rule set, which really you shouldn't, that's why creating these CSS snippets is a little bit strange to me. You could do that if you wished. All right, so now what about editing? Like if you wanted to modify the actual DSP over here, like, maybe the colors changes, or something like that. This is what makes it really handy to have that DSP set up in Visual Studio Code. So let's say our primary color is going to change to something else. So let's go ahead, and what we could do is we can edit, and now we could change the primary color to something else. So let's say we want it to be like that. Actually, let's get it away from the original color. There we go. Now that we've changed and made changes over here, we can see it's a little blue dot, which means we need to go ahead and update the DSP right here. All right, so now that it's updated, we can come back to our Visual Studio Code and we go into our Adobe XD area and we go to DSP settings and we choose import. So when it imports, it's going to update all that information, including the CSS. So now all the tokens are updated as well. And if we go back over here, let's see here. And you may have to click start editing and then like finish editing real quick in order for it to update the CSS variable, or maybe it already did that, but the browser just wasn't catching it. So what you can do is go back. I had to refresh this and then it showed the updated colors. So all in all, awesome stuff. Very excited that, it basically makes the process of dealing with a UI designer versus in the communication between a UI designer and a front-end developer a lot easier and now a lot more integrated with this extension. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed that. Let me know what you think. Is this going to be the feature that makes you switch perhaps from Sketch or maybe even Figma to Adobe XD? Let me know in the comments. Give a like, give a subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.